You can't sit here, my older cousin Kayla said with a smirk as I pulled out a chair at the far end of the wedding reception hall. That's the kids' table. Everyone nearby laughed. It wasn't just the little kids at the table who found it funny. Even my own mom laughed. My aunt chuckled too. From the head table, my sister looked over and gave me that tight little smile she always wore when something embarrassing happened to me. She looked proud of my discomfort. Before I go on, tell me honestly, what would you do in this situation? Drop a comment and let me know. I read everyone. Now back to the story. I stood there, not sure what to do. My heels, which I bought from a secondhand store, were already hurting my feet. The blue dress I had on was old and faded. I had borrowed it from a kind neighbor and did some small sewing to make it fit. Under the bright lights of a hall, I suddenly felt like everyone could see how cheap everything I wore was. I felt small. I felt ashamed. Still, I gave a weak smile and said, "There are no other seats." Kayla just shrugged. "You should have RSVP'd with someone," she said. "Or at least worn something that didn't look like it came from the donation bin." My mom didn't defend me. Instead, she whispered loudly enough for half the table to hear, "She can't even afford a real dress." The other people at the table leaned in, clearly enjoying the moment. Her words stung like little sharp needles. I felt each one, but I didn't respond. I sat down quietly, my head lowered. If I spoke, I would cry. And if I cried, they would enjoy it even more. They were already winning. Then something happened. "Excuse me," a deep, calm voice said from nearby. It was clear and confident, cutting through the laughter. I looked up. Standing next to me was a man in a perfect black suit. He looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. It was Mason Thames, the CEO of Thames Aerospace. He was famous. I had seen him on TV and in business magazines. He was on lists like top entrepreneurs under 36. He was rich, smart, and successful. He looked right at me and asked, "Is this seat taken?" For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Everyone else went quiet. The laughter stopped. Kayla's smirk faded. My mom looked shocked. My sister's proud little smile disappeared. I had no idea why someone like Mason Thames would want to sit next to me. But in that moment, something changed. Not just in the room, but in me too. I lifted my head and smiled. Not a fake smile, but a real one. "No," I said. "It's all yours." And just like that, everything started to feel different. I thought I was seeing things. Maybe I was dreaming. But then something happened that made my heart stop. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood two tall men in dark suits. They looked serious, clearly his security team. The whole room went quiet. Kayla's wine glass hit the table with a soft clink. Everyone turned to look. Even my mom, who had just been laughing at me, went completely still. "Mason," I stammered, trying to understand what was happening. "What are you doing here?" He smiled at me, kind and a little playful. "I was looking for a seat," he said. "But more importantly, I came for you, Judy." He said my name like it meant something important. Then, without looking at anyone else, he pulled out the chair next to me and sat down. He acted like this was totally normal, like he belonged there, and even more surprising, like I belonged there too. You could feel the change in the air. People were holding their breath. No one said a word. And then came the moment I will never forget. Mason reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a small black velvet box. He placed it gently on the table in front of me. The room went even more silent. It was like everyone had frozen. "Let's not do this here," I whispered, suddenly nervous. My face was hot. My hands were shaking. I hadn't told him about the wedding. I didn't think he'd show up. But Mason didn't seem bothered. He just gave a little laugh. "I don't care about the place," he said. "I care about you. And I think it's time everyone else knows that." Then he stood up again, still holding the little box. He turned to face the front of the room, where my sister, the bride, was sitting, sipping champagne with a smirk on her face. "Sorry to interrupt," Mason said loudly but politely. "But I'm here for Judy." Gasps echoed around the room. Aunt Tiffany dropped her fork. My mom looked like she was about to faint. Mason opened the box, but it wasn't a ring. Inside was a sleek, black metal card with a gold T on it. It was a private account card. I had heard about it once. His chief financial officer had joked that it could buy a Fountain Square penthouse with just one swipe. I believe in supporting smart people, Mason said, his eyes locked on mine. And Judy, she's the smartest woman I know. She's starting her own nonprofit, and I'm going to fund it. I stared at him, speechless. We hadn't even talked about this recently. I never sent him the full idea. My mother had her hand on her chest. My sister looked like she had just seen a ghost. Then Mason smiled at the room. So, he said, if this seat is still open. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone already knew what he meant. I think I'll stay right here, Mason said with a calm smile. And just like that, everything changed. The same people who had been laughing at me just minutes before were now completely silent. Some looked nervous. Some looked shocked. No one moved. Not even the band. The violin players froze, their bows still in the air like they were too surprised to keep playing. The room felt heavy and still. I stared down at the black card Mason had placed in front of me. My hands were shaking as I touched the smooth tablecloth. I looked up at him, still trying to understand what was going on. Why was he here? Why now? Mason Thames was not someone who liked attention. He wasn't the kind of man who made big, flashy entrances. He was known for being calm, smart, and in control. So what made him show up like this at my sister's wedding? Then, my mother broke the silence. Her voice was high-pitched and shaky. Is this some kind of joke? She asked, clearly upset. Mason turned to her. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look surprised. He just looked at her the way someone might look at a stranger who had interrupted their thoughts. You must be Mrs. Greer, he said in a calm voice. I am her mother, she snapped. And I don't know what you think you're doing, but we don't need your little show here. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I wanted to speak, but before I could say anything, she cut me off. You really think showing up with some rich boyfriend makes you important? She said loudly. You're still the same girl who barely got through community college. Still working part-time at that old library with no air conditioning. That hurt. But before I could feel too embarrassed, Mason stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. He simply spoke in a strong, clear tone. She's also the woman who helped scan and organize over 15,000 old records by hand. She taught reading classes on the weekends. She helped her neighbor's son, who has autism, without asking for anything in return. And she wrote a proposal so good, I said yes to funding it before I even finished reading it. My chest felt tight. My eyes burned. He wasn't just standing up for me. He saw me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just trying to survive, I was finally standing tall. My mother looked embarrassed now. Her face was turning red. She muttered, You don't know what kind of girl she is. She's not who you think. She's not classy. She's not like them. She pointed toward my sister and her new husband. Mason looked at her and smiled. Exactly, he said. She's better. And in that moment, I believed it too. I don't know what upset my sister more, the insult Mason gave her, or the sound of people clapping from the back of the room. It wasn't loud, but it was there. A few guests at distant tables, even some people from the groom's side, had seen everything. The servers had paused too. Everyone was watching. I heard soft whispers floating through the room. Isn't that Mason Thames? Isn't he worth, like, $700 million? Who's the girl with him? And just like that, everything changed. I wasn't the girl in the second-hand dress anymore. I wasn't the one sitting at the kids' table, trying not to cry. I wasn't the family disappointment. No. I was someone worth noticing. Someone worth standing up for. Let's go, Mason said quietly. He reached out his hand toward me. I can't just leave, I whispered, unsure if my legs would even move. Yes, you can, he said softly. You don't owe them a single second more. I stood up. The silence in the room was heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Every step I took next to Mason felt loud, like thunder against the floor. Then I heard it, my sister's voice, sharp and angry. Wait, she shouted. We turned. She was red in the face, her body shaking. You can't just walk out like that. This is my day. Mason looked at her for just a moment. Then maybe next time, he said calmly, don't start it by embarrassing the wrong person. My sister opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her new husband stood beside her, frozen, like he didn't know what to do. Then Mason reached into his jacket one last time. He pulled out a white envelope and handed it to the wedding coordinator. Please give this to the venue manager, he said. This will cover the rest of tonight's cost. Gasps filled the room again. Then he turned to me. Ready? I nodded. As we walked past the table that once made fun of me, I didn't look back. But I heard my mother whisper, barely loud enough to catch. What have we done? Outside, the car waiting wasn't some fancy rented limo. It was Mason's personal Tesla Model X, midnight silver with a smooth, matte finish. The windows were dark like black glass. The driver opened the door, and Mason helped me in gently, like I was someone important. Not the girl everyone used to ignore. When the door closed and the world outside faded, I finally let out a long breath. The tears came, not from sadness, but from feeling seen. Really seen. I didn't cry loudly, just soft, quiet tears slipping down my cheeks. I wasn't crying because I was broken. I was crying because someone finally chose me. Someone who didn't care about where I came from or how much money I had. He just saw me. Mason didn't say anything at first. He just held my hand, firm and calm. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't expect you to come. I didn't want you to see me like that, I said softly, looking out the window. Mason turned to me, his voice calm and steady. Like what? Brave? Graceful? Patient? Even when they didn't deserve your kindness? I let out a small, bitter laugh. More like embarrassed. That dress I was wearing? It cost me $18 at a thrift store. And that table they stuck me at, it wasn't even set up right. No name cards, no real napkins. Just some old forks and a plastic vase. Mason leaned back slightly and looked at me with quiet respect. And yet, you still sat there. You didn't yell. You didn't make a scene. Judy, I've been in rooms full of powerful people, billionaires even, and they didn't have half the calm you showed tonight. His words were kind, but they hurt in a way I didn't expect. Maybe because no one had ever spoken to me like that before. I've always been the invisible one, I said, my voice shaking. My sister was the perfect one. Straight A's, private school, magazine engagement announcements. And me? I was the extra. The one they'd say, oh, her. I wiped my eyes. I've been living on cheap noodles and tutoring kids just to pay rent. Mason didn't say anything. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. And every time I tried to do something that mattered, like my reading program, they'd laugh at me. Say stuff like, you think books are going to change the world? They never came to my graduation. Not even once. My mom even told me, you're not meant for the spotlight. Finally, Mason spoke. She was wrong. He pulled out his phone, tapped on the screen, and then turned it toward me. It was my nonprofit proposal. The one I had stayed up nights working on. My dream to build reading centers in poor neighborhoods. I hadn't even sent him the finished version yet. On the screen was a number. A big one with 6 zeros. I'm giving you full funding, he said. And a team to help you. You don't need anyone else's approval now. My eyes widened. But I haven't finished everything yet. The paperwork isn't done. The plan isn't perfect. I haven't. You have the heart, Mason said, gently cutting me off. You have the idea. That's more than most people. I'll help you find the rest. We sat in silence for a moment. Then something inside me shifted. Not in a painful way. It wasn't breaking. It felt like something was finally opening up. Why me? I whispered. Mason looked at me with the softest expression I'd ever seen. Because I've seen you, he said. All those days you thought no one was paying attention, I was. And for the first time in a long time, I believed someone meant it. I was there, Mason said gently. At that charity event where you brought handmade books. I saw you at the literacy rally too, when your hands were shaking, but your message stayed strong. You've always stood tall, even in small rooms, he continued. It's time the world sees what I've seen in you all along. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years, I believed someone when they said I mattered. When they said I was enough. Mason leaned in just a little, not close enough to make me uncomfortable, just enough to show he cared. Can I take you somewhere? He asked. Where? I asked, my voice soft. To show you just how wrong they were about you. How much they underestimated you, he said. Before I could respond, the car started moving. And just like that, I wasn't just leaving the wedding, I was stepping into something new. A new chapter. A new life. At first, the car ride was quiet. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much to feel. My hands were still shaking a little. My thoughts bounced between shock, hope, and relief. I kept looking at the envelope Mason had given the wedding coordinator. He had paid for the entire reception. Not to brag. Not to show off. He did it to stop the cruelty, to remind them all that kindness still matters. City lights blinked past the windows as the car turned onto a quiet street. We pulled into a long driveway, lined with tall green bushes and small glowing lights. The gate opened silently as we rolled forward. This is my place in Fountain Square, Mason said in a calm voice. I thought you could rest here for a while, just to get away from everything. The car stopped in front of a modern glass house. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't showy. It felt peaceful. Everything about it matched Mason. Quiet, calm, thoughtful. I started, but he gently stopped me. You need a moment, he said, just to remember who you really are. You've been giving so much, running on empty for too long. I followed him inside. Right away, I felt warm. The air smelled like cedar and soft vanilla. The lighting was gentle, and the place felt like a safe hug. Then I saw something that took my breath away. Photos. Not of Mason alone, but of me. Pictures I didn't know existed. One of me 3 years ago, standing in the rain on a sidewalk, handing out flyers for my reading program. Another showed me at the school where I volunteered, holding a pile of old books patched together with tape. My knees almost gave out. You had these? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. You inspired me long before you even knew my name. And in that moment I realized something. He hadn't just shown up for me today. He had been seeing me all along. We sat on the couch together, and I let the quiet stretch between us. I didn't want to ruin the moment, but one question had been sitting in my heart since the wedding. I finally turned to Mason and asked it. Why did you come today? You never said you would. I didn't even invite you. Mason looked straight at me. His voice was soft, but steady. I saw the RSVP list, he said. They listed you as Judy Greer, no guess. That told me everything I needed to know. They were setting you up. I've seen it before. The way some families treat the ones who don't fit their perfect image. My throat felt tight. I looked down, but Mason kept speaking. So I decided if they wanted a show, I'd give them one. But not to get back at them. For you. To show them who you really are. I nearly broke down right then. I didn't even know how to take in what he was saying. Someone had actually chosen me. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Mason stood up and pulled out a thin laptop from his briefcase. I have something else to show you, he said. He opened the laptop and pulled up a website, Indianapolis Civic Media. My photo was on the front page. Not from the wedding, but from earlier that week. The headline read, "The Woman Reviving Literacy, One Block at a Time." I stared at the screen, not believing it. I pitched your story, Mason said with a smile. They've been searching for someone to feature in their Change Agents campaign. I sent them your stats, your work, and a few of those photos. You're joking, I said, my voice barely a whisper. They sent me the draft this morning. It goes live at midnight. I looked again. My photo. My words. My mission. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't just someone in the background. I was the story. When I woke up the next morning in Mason's guest room, the sunlight was pouring through the soft curtains. The white sheets were warm around me, and for a second, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. But the laptop was still open on the desk. My face was still on the front page. The headline was real, and so was everything that came next. By 8:35 a.m., I had 159 unread emails. By 9:10 a.m., producers from 3 national morning shows had contacted me. By 10:55 a.m., I was trending on Twitter. Hashtag Judy the Reader. Hashtag Change Agent. Hashtag From Kids Table to Heroin. But none of that prepared me for what happened at 11:25 a.m.
My phone rang.
It was my mother. I stared at it and let it ring. A minute later, a text from my sister popped up. Please, we need to talk. Mom is freaking out. What the hell is going on? Mason? I just looked at the message. I didn't reply. For the first time ever, they weren't in control of the story. I was. Mason and I were already on the way to the TV studio. I had agreed to do a short interview about my nonprofit work. On the ride there, I turned to him and asked the question that had been sitting in my heart all morning. Should I go see them? He looked at me for a moment, thinking carefully. Then he said, only if you're doing it for yourself. Not for closure. Not for their approval. You don't need their version of sorry. You already won. I nodded, but deep down, a part of me still wanted to look them in the eyes. I wanted to see if they understood. If they finally saw me. After the interview ended, I asked the driver to take a different route. We pulled up in front of my parents' house, the same small brick home where I had grown up hearing the same message over and over again. Dreams were too expensive for people like us. Hope was for other families, not ours. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. I knocked. The door swung open quickly, almost like they had been waiting. My mom stood there, pale and shaking. My dad was behind her. My sister stood off to the side, mascara smudged under her eyes and her phone still in her hand. Judy, my mom whispered, you were on television. I know, I said quietly. My sister stepped closer. Why didn't you tell us you knew him? I didn't think it mattered to you, I replied. Well, she snapped, it does now. We didn't mean to make you feel small, my mom added. We just thought you were the quiet one, the bookworm. You never seemed to want the spotlight. No, I said, looking her straight in the eye. You just never let me have it. She reached out and tried to take my hand. Judy, the things we said at the wedding, we were just joking. You know how families are. Do you? I asked softly. Because a real family doesn't laugh at you when you're hurting. A real family doesn't tear you down in front of strangers. A real family doesn't call your dreams a waste of time. Tears spilled down her face. Then, something I never thought I'd see happened. She dropped to her knees on the porch. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice barely a whisper. We were wrong. We were so wrong. My dad, a man of few words, slowly lowered himself beside her. It was like the shame was too heavy to carry any longer. Even my sister sat down on the steps, head in her hands. They didn't cry just for me. They cried for all the moments they missed. For the version of me they never tried to know. Mason was waiting by the car. I didn't stay long. Just long enough to say, I forgive you, but I won't forget. Then I left. Because the girl they once laughed at was gone. In her place stood a woman with strength, purpose, and peace. And I knew, after all this time, I would never be invisible again. If this story touched you even a little, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And don't forget to subscribe. If you've ever felt this kind of hurt, just know you're not alone.